So when the news breaks that Satanists were behind this, the other children start coming forward with their own satanic accounts of their abuse. And kids talk about seeing babies getting murdered. But clearly, the police are like, there are no reports of missing babies or dead babies showing up anywhere.
I'm glad the police finally have a clue.
Well, do they? So people start developing this theory that Satanists are having children at home and choosing not to register them so they can then use them as human sacrifice. Right. And everyone believes it because nobody seems to be thinking anymore. Of course, the police find no wounds on Matthew.
This is what I was going to say. When his ears were stapled, he'd come home. She wouldn't have gone, Matthew, what's going on with your ears today?
Yeah, honey, what's this? What's the vibe you're going for today?
But yeah, clearly she's born to the hysteria and she's turned absolutely crazy.
Welcome to the Compendium, an assembly of shadows of an era gone by where panic wasn't just for the disco.
Panic for the disco? We're talking about like the band?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very fitting for this week's episode. I know you don't know what we're talking about, but
I have no idea. We're talking about music this week?
We'll come on to that.
Okay.
Should we do introductions?
Let's do it.
For those of you tuning in for the very first time, I'm your host, Kyle Reese.
And I'm your co-host, Adam Cox.
You are listening to The Compendium, an assembly of fascinating and intriguing things. We're a weekly variety podcast where I, Kyle Reese, tell Adam Cox all about a topic that I think you'll find both fascinating and intriguing. Before we get into there, how are you doing?
I'm okay. All good. We went to see Pete Tong last night. Slightly sore head today, but otherwise all good.
You got very drunk and very jumpy. But what was really interesting is it was Pete Tong in Erland Park in the area that we live in. I was really intrigued by the demographic of the people that were there because they were all in their late 30s and 40s. Yeah, there were.
It was a mixture. It was classic Ibiza, and I think that's the songs from the 90s, 30 years ago.
But why has it not attracted a younger audience?
Yeah, I don't know. But I think it was good. It was nostalgic, but a different take on it. So yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I have for you today, I was browsing Reddit and I saw this incredible interview on the streets of New York, I think, where this guy was talking with strangers about their fashion choices. Like, sweetie, what's this? What was the inspiration behind this today?
Okay.
And so he gets chatting to this guy. They have a conversation and straight away the conversation just takes a really somber turn. And first of all, he's like, hey, your glasses, they're screwed. Like, what happened to your glasses? And he was like, actually, it was fallout from an incident last year where he died.
What?
Yeah. Anyway, right. I'm just going to have to play the clip because it's incredible.
Your glasses is gone. Like, what? How did that happen?
I had a seizure.
Really?
Yeah. It's pretty crazy to talk about. But yeah, I had a seizure last week, and it's fallout from my death from last year. I died.
Dead?
Yeah. I had what's called a craniectomy, or I had a blood clot on my brain. It grew to the size of my brain. Popped my skull open when I was working at Finale Cafe.
This happened when you were at work?
Yeah. And then I was in a coma for 2 weeks. I was pronounced dead. My vitals came back on in the ambulance. I survived a 6-hour surgery. It's called a craniectomy, and it was a 42% fatality rate. And my doctor calls me coin flipper because I flipped a coin on my life, and I had a bad coin, and I still won.
Whoa. So wait, so you essentially...
So he died.
That's so weird for him to just go, oh yeah, it's back from when I died last year.
Yeah, so casual.
Yeah.
But now, what's incredible is he describes what it was like to die.
Right, okay.
Let's continue.
How did that feel? What was the experience like?
Peaceful.
Peaceful?
Yeah.
Really? Like, what did you see? Like, did you see anything?
Nothing.
Really?
You don't see anything. I'm not saying nobody sees anything.
Right.
I did not see anything. And I've always thought stories like that are kind of like BS or whatever. But now that I've been through it, what I can say is true that a lot of people say is life flashes before your eyes. Like every memory, I'm telling you, every single memory you've ever made in your entire life will rush past you at like light speed. And you get to a point where whatever pain you might be feeling, you don't feel it anymore. And you'll kind of just start to not even understand what's going on. And then either you'll be back or you won't.
Wow.
But it's very peaceful. And honestly, one of the hardest things I've had to deal with is accepting to be back alive after I died.
Wow. Wait, so it's harder for you to accept you're alive than being dead?
Yes, it was really peaceful. And it honestly is something that I struggled with for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling better now. And I hope it always stays that way.
Wow.
So until then, yeah, we just are going to...
That's crazy.
Wow. Guy, he generally seems quite gutted, doesn't he, in a way?
He does. Isn't that incredible? So, of course, he's kind of almost corroborating what we have always heard about dying without you see something, you're not walking to the light or anything.
Yeah, all these gates or whatever.
But what really disturbed me was that he was gutted, that he didn't die.
There must be some kind of chemical release in your brain where well, it sounds like that in terms of it's your body adjusting or getting you prepared or like calm and like comfortable with dying.
Yeah, some kind of degree of euphoria. He just comes to peace with it. Maybe it's your body's way of keeping you calm.
Yeah.
Isn't that just incredible?
That is, isn't it?
I've been thinking about that ever since like we came back from holiday. It does give me a little bit less anxiety about the prospect of dying and this whole idea that your body almost wants it.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm a little bit less afraid of it. I'm still petrified, but I'm seeing it through a different lens now.
But then was he given drugs by the ambulance and stuff like that to kind of...
Well, in the very beginning, he says that in the interview, he says that he died in the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
So I doubt there was anything that he could have been given at that moment in time. Maybe.
Morphine?
Why would they give you morphine though, right? Morphine so you kind of keep you comfortable.
Yeah. But if you're in a lot of pain.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So in today's episode of the Compendium, we are going to be delving into the biggest high-profile child abuse case in US criminal history, where the spotlight falls on a small family-run nursery in Southern California known as the McMartin Preschool in Manhattan Beach, where over 300 charges of child molestation are levied against its 76-year-old founder, Virginia McMartin.
That's a woman.
A female.
Right.
As well as her daughter and her 2 grandchildren. This case became emblematic of what is now known as the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, and it ignited a huge media frenzy that shook the US and instilled fear and panic amongst parents for over 10 bloody years. And as the McMartin preschool case unraveled, investigators would eventually uncover allegations of more than 1,400 children claiming that they had suffered sexual abuse at the hands of the McMartin staff, allegedly linking to a pedophilic satanic cult network that supposedly spanned the entire USA and implicated thousands of elites in sickening acts of child sacrifice, animal killings, child pornography, Satan worship, cannibalism, and bestiality.
How have I not heard about this? I mean, I've heard like people talk about Satan and like worshippers and as bad, but I've never heard to this extent. Wow.
This is the crazy thing though, right? So it's nearly 4 decades since obviously this all unraveled. Mm-hmm. And while it may have been forgotten, its impact can still be seen today. So in today's episode, I'll tell you what happened at the McMartin preschool, how these events were even able to take place, and the major events that led up to and following the McMartin preschool case, as well as the far-reaching consequences of the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. So normally at this point, I'd say, what do you know about this?
Well, clearly
but
nothing.
You know nothing.
I mean, it sounds worse than Jim Will Fix It.
So if you don't know who Jim Will Fix It is, Jim Will Fix It was this, like, I would describe him as a UK national treasure. He was, and actually when you look back at him now, when you think about him, he looked freaking creepy as hell.
You would not let him near children.
But people loved him. He was this kind of old guy, had these weird little round glasses, really pasty skin, really old, blonde hair.
Smoked a cigar,
wore a red tracksuit.
Presented like a music show, kids shows, things like that, family entertainment.
Yeah, and the Jim Will Fix It reference comes in where like a kid would send in a wish and he would make it happen. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think America has a very similar thing, but it was all run by this guy.
Yeah.
Who ended up being one of the most prolific. We can't even call him a pedophile because he just didn't discriminate. He fiddled with old grannies. He fiddled with men, he fiddled with everyone.
Yeah, it's kind
He
of...
was just prolific.
Yeah, he was a proper pest.
And what makes it crazy is that he was deeply affiliated and celebrated and liked and like in the same circles as people like Prince Charles.
Mm.
So maybe he deserves his own episode.
Maybe.
God.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued to see what this is going to be about.
So, Adam, let's begin. Our story is going to start with a woman named Judy Johnson. She's a young mother who had been navigating a turbulent marriage while also grappling with the heart-wrenching reality that her young 8-year-old son had an inoperable brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, amongst having another young child to care for, Judy's mental health was ailing and she was struggling to navigate the many difficult and different medical procedures that her son needed to undergo just to keep him alive. Now, as a result, she develops this deep resentment towards doctors, which develops like into an irrational fear and suspicion of them. And Judy is also a Christian religious fundamentalist. So all the science and the medical procedures and all that advice and stuff just puts her at odds with kind of the doctors at the time. Overall, with everything that Judy is going through, you can imagine this is a very stressful situation for her. Now, amongst all of this, Judy mistakenly fails to enroll her youngest son, Matthew, into a preschool, and now time has run out. The preschool year is about to start, and there are no openings for him at all in any of the schools in the district or in the area or anything. So Judy decides that on the first day of school, she is simply just going to leave Matthew outside of school
Really?
with a note essentially saying, you have to take him, sorry, not sorry.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
brazen.
bold, yeah.
Yeah. So that school is the McMartin preschool in Manhattan Beach in California. Now, the nursery school was a family-run school founded by a woman called Virginia McMartin and employed several of her family members, including her daughter, Peggy McMartin, and Peggy's son, Ray Bucky.
Okay.
Now, initially, Virginia wants to reject Matthew because he's not playing by the rules, right? You don't just leave your kid outside of preschool. Maybe in the 80s you did, but that's just not the thing to do, especially when
Seems that way, yeah.
like you have a set number of teachers per student ratio kind of thing.
Yeah, what if there's no room in the class? There's not any spare pencils.
What if there's no little hook for him
Yeah.
to hang up his little coat? However, so what happens is Peggy, that's Virginia's daughter, she manages to persuade her mother to show compassion towards Judy's situation and make an exception for Matthew, which is a decision that will soon take an unexpected turn.
Yeah, I have a feeling that she perhaps should have dropped him off at a different school.
I think so. But again, who knows?
Okay.
Who knows? So a short while later in June, Matthew says something that catches Judy's attention. And he mentions that it's really painful when he makes a bowel movement and it's also really difficult for him to sit down. So concerned, Judy investigates the impacted area and decides that she's going to keep an eye on it over the next few days.
Okay.
But by July, Matthew is still having difficulty pooping and his anus is now irritated and swollen and he's now complaining that it's really itchy.
Okay.
So Judy takes Matthew to the hospital where after evaluating him, the doctor suspects that Judy's frequent examinations, poking around his little bumhole,
Yeah, I was going to say.
has likely caused her to pass on her own vaginal fungal infection onto him.
Ooh.
I know, poor thing. So during this visit, the doctor carries out a series of rudimentary checks and mentions that he wants to take Matthew's temperature, but he's going to do it rectally.
Okay.
Do you ever have your temperature taken rectally?
I don't think I ever had.
I think I have. It's not unpleasant.
Okay. I wouldn't choose to have it done.
No. So in this moment, Matthew comments that this is what Ray does to him. And of course, he is referring to taking the temperature, not the method.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, like, who's Ray? What's Ray been doing?
Exactly. Ray is obviously Matthew's preschool teacher, and so this grabs Judy's attention. So she quizzes the doctor on whether or not it's possible that Matthew's discomfort was a result of Ray abusing her son. But the doctor emphasizes that if this was the case, like Matthew would show severe signs of trauma. Like no shit, like he's 2 years old.
Yeah. But not to go into too much detail, but I imagine just a thermometer isn't going to...
No.
Yeah.
And from what he can see is that Matthew just has like minor irritation.
Mm-hmm.
But this deeply frustrates Judy. So let's talk about Ray for a second. So Ray Bucky is the grandson of 76-year-old Virginia McMartin, who is, of course, the founder of the McMartin preschool. And he's also the son of Peggy McMartin. That's the other member of staff. So Peggy is the daughter of Virginia.
Yes.
So it's like several generations that are working at the school. And the McMartin preschool, as I said already, is a family-run business. So it's not unusual for Ray to be working there, all right? So before the allegations, Ray Bucky had no criminal record and doesn't seem kind of the type to molest kids at all. He's quite gentle when you see kind of videos of him in the court case and stuff. But people do see him as just a little bit kind of non-conventional. And there's no doubt in my mind that these assertions about him comes out after he's arrested. Because I think before then, he'd just be completely normal.
Okay.
So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that people describe him as a bit of a beach bum, hinting at like his laid-back Southern California beach lifestyle. And the only thing that's notable here is that Ray would often not wear underwear. So when he would sit down, you'd get a glimpse of his good through his kind of like short legs.
School?
Probably not at school. I think they're talking about like just in his general lifestyle. I'm sure he's very professional at school.
Yeah, put the mouse back in the house, please.
Put the mouse back in the house. How many more Friends references can we fit into this podcast? 24 episodes in.
I don't know.
So by this time in the 1980s, the perception of male preschool teachers was a complex subject. So it's similar to what it is today, but there was a time where that wasn't the case. Now, typically preschool teachers were predominantly female. And as we know, this is still the case today. And this is largely a result of the changing attitudes towards men in close proximity to children in the preceding decades leading up to the 1980s, because there was a time when this was completely normal for men to be working as preschool teachers. And also society was starting to view male educators with a little bit of skepticism and kind of suspicion. So I want to stop there because I want us to take a little step back. And I want to tell you a bit about the 2 decades that led up to this precise moment, because it will give us an understanding of how these attitudes towards men in close proximity to children came about and the shit show that is about to unfold, which is the McMartin preschool case, and how this was even allowed to happen in the first place. Because the 1980 Satanic Panic, i.e. what Judy Johnson is about to kick off after her doctor's visit, doesn't just erupt out of nowhere, all right? Instead, it grows from the seeds that were sown in the previous 20 years. And with increased mounting cultural, social, and political tensions, it's then allowed to erupt.
It's political?
It's political, baby.
Right.
So during the time between the 1960s and the 1970s, several high-profile events centered around the occult started grabbing the media's attention and breaking into the mainstream. For instance, the Charles Manson, the family kind of deal. Have you ever heard of Charles Manson?
Yeah.
So real high level, Charles Manson led a cult called the Family in the 1960s who believed in the apparent prophesized kind of race war called the Helter Skelter. At the time, Satan worship was not a core aspect of the family, but the brutal nature of their crimes and Charles's kind of manipulative personality led to associating the group with satanic practices. In 1969, however, Charles ordered his followers to commit a bunch of murders, including the famous case of the Sharon Tate murder. And that's what he is known for. So this grabbed the media's attention throughout the 1960s. And then at this time, we also have the infamous Zodiac Killer, who was active in the Northern California region during the 1960s and the early 1970s. And he was known for sending kind of cryptic letters to the media and to the police. And again, this wasn't directly linked with Satanism in any way, but the eerie nature of the crimes led loads of people to speculate and develop these myths that would suggest this kind of occult connection. So additionally, the Church of Satan was also established in the 1960s as well and had grown to around 5,000 members by the 1980s. Now, again, misconceptions.
Okay.
Because followers of the Church of Satan don't actually worship Satan at all. Did you know this?
No, I was just about to say, how did this come about? How do you start a church?
Okay.
Is there a register?
This was during a time like in the 1940s that led into the 1950s and then the 1960s and then the 70s, where you have churches like Scientology that come about, all the different cults that come about. People are just exploring and experimenting with faith and kind of these different movements. So it all comes out of this hotbed of these things that are happening at the time. My point is that they don't actually worship fucking Satan. Instead, the church sees Satan as the symbol of like personal freedom, indulgence, and individualism, and not as like a physical being.
It's like a way.
It's like an anti kind of thing. Like we want to go for everything that's the opposite of what theology kind of states.
Okay, but they're not actually worshipping a guy
No.
with horns.
No, they're not at all. But he is their symbol, if you will. But I think it's about what he stands for. So the church is actually rooted in an atheistic and a materialistic philosophy, which places a focus on the tangible here and now rather than any afterlife. So it's the complete rejection of theology. They do have a Bible, though, and it is called the Satanic Bible, but it's all about this idea of promoting kind of rational self-interest, personal responsibility, individualism, and critical thinking and things like that.
This feels like what you have on like Instagram now when people like start your own business and follow these guides, and more of a help or a way to approach it.
But all while they're rejecting the old kind of, oh, you don't want to work in a cubicle. Like, why would you do that? You want to come to work in like slacks and jeans and flip-flops, you know?
Well, start your own business. Don't do 9 to 5, that kind of...
I'm loving the parallels that we're drawing between the two. And also the thing to remember is that 5,000 members is not a huge amount to ultimately fuel public concern. So naturally, the catalyst that is obviously bringing all this kind of Satanism kind of claims and fears to the mainstream is, of course, the media.
Of course. The media.
Surprise, surprise. And why? Because preying on the unfounded fears and anxieties of a society is a super solid way of selling more papers, which is, of course, a running bloody theme in all of our podcasts, pretty much.
Yep.
So simultaneously, movies like The Exorcist were dramatizing kind of fears of Satanism and kind of possession and rituals, and all of this was all being noticed by Christian religious movements who had started loading their sermons with fears about Satanism being on the rise across America. And so this fear begins to instill itself into the psyche of like just the ordinary American. And this fear is also what helps the church, because before this time, they weren't big political players. It was this that helped them establish itself as its own political bloc within kind of the American political system. So it's worth remembering that this time the church had a lot of power, which politicians could not afford to ignore. So their voice was now being heard for kind of one of the very first times in American political history. And politicians were reacting to it because they know if they do, then they get the votes, etc.
Yeah.
And that just makes essentially America at this time more conservative in terms of some of their policies and stuff, so they can win more votes.
Okay.
So also around about this time, a book called The Satan Seller by a guy called Mike Warnke. Warnke? Warnke. Warn, but with a K and an E at the end. Warnke. Anyway, this book takes America by storm, and Warnke claims that he is a former satanic high priest who believes that he was saved by Jesus Christ himself when he was called to serve in the Vietnam War. So after the war, Warnke uses his past to launch a career as a Christian stand-up comedian, where he's literally blending humor with quite literally horrifying tales of satanic rituals and body mutilations in his acts. It's really creepy to watch. In one breath, he's literally telling everyone a joke, and then he transitions into talking about sacrificing a literal baby. And there's actual kids in the audience when you watch some of these shows, and it's horrific. And the audience and everyone's just switched from this lighthearted tone and atmosphere to be just being silent and listening and taking everything he says seriously. And this ends up building up this collective societal fear against Satanists and Satanism and the occult being on the rise across America. All these things are working together to fuel this kind of this fear.
So why was he... I'm a bit confused. So why was he doing this?
He wants to just capitalize probably on the rise of kind of this idea, this fear of Satanism throughout America.
Right, okay.
And he's claiming that he used to be a satanic high priest.
Oh, he claims to be, but he was. Fine.
Oh my God, yes. Obviously, his accounts are all bullshit. The police do investigate and they find literally nothing. He makes claims like he had some kind of weird ritual kind of feast dinner that he invited Charles Manson to, but Charles Manson couldn't have been there because I think he was tied up in some kind of legal stuff. So
he sounds a bit deluded.
It is, but he's capitalizing on these fears in America. And that's the important bit, right? Mm-hmm. So while all this is unfolding, societal attitudes towards child sexual abuse are also starting to evolve for the very first time, because before this point, people didn't give a shit about kids. And so for the very first time, Americans are beginning to accept that child sexual abuse was way more widespread than previously believed. Before this, it was just like a simple kind of family matter that needed to be kept private. So they would brush it under the rug. And you've seen kind of old school TV shows where people say, Mum, like Uncle Freddie was molesting me. And they're like, oh, no, he didn't. And like they're just denied because they don't want to bring shame to the family name. Cast your mind back to when we did the Turpin family abuse case where Louise was being abused by her family friend, right? And the mum just walked in on this guy essentially raping her in their living room. And she did nothing. She was just like, it's a family matter. Don't tell anyone. We'll brush under the carpet. And why? Because they want to bring shame to the family name.
Yeah.
And it just seems like that was the attitude back then. But this was now changing.
Okay, good.
So before this, it was just a simply family matter and it was meant to be kept private. But fear instilled by the media called for greater demands for this to kind of now be addressed. So America introduces the Child Abuse Prevention Treatment Act, or CAPTA, in 1974. And this act mandates the reporting of any suspected or known child abuse allegation whatsoever, anything, which leads to a huge surge in reports of child molestation, which is driven by this media's desire to sell more papers as well. So these cases have been reported by teachers and people in care, like in like youth groups and things like that. They're reporting them, the media's getting hold of them, and it's now just big news because people are interested.
What? So teachers are reporting that family members of a child
Yeah,
are
it's
abusing.
mandated. If you suspect it, you can't ignore it anymore. You have to report it. And that's what this CAPTA Act of 1974 is essentially doing. But the problem is this inevitably results in an increase in government spending through having to deal with all of these new abuse allegations, which is now obviously compulsory to report. And this sees a huge increase in spending because police departments are now being overrun, having to investigate more and more allegations, and prisons are literally reaching their capacity. There's child sex molesters everywhere. But the biggest concern here is that with all this increased incarceration, the government is now losing middle-class taxpayers.
Right, so they're actually quite wealthy people that are going inside.
Well, they're just regular people, I would say. But yes, they're losing all these taxpayers. So the government decides that instead of sending these men to prison, they're instead going to mandate therapy for these men, which often would involve family members and also their victims.
What?
To attend. I know. So now,
You've
of
got to
course,
attend with the person that's abused you. You've got to attend a session to help them rehabilitate into society.
yeah, because I think they have this desire to also keep the family together as well. So it's like mediation almost. It's so backwards.
Yeah.
So of course, all of this sounds horrific, and it would often lead to the re-traumatization of victims. But it does mark a very important step in the way that child sex abuse claims were being treated, because it forced police to deal more sensitively with victims, and it removed for the first time that stigma against these victims as well, while still striving to keep families together through the therapy and the rehabilitation, which was a massive concern for the governments and a particular kind of concern for the church as well, who they really valued kind of like family unity, keeping the family together, which is really important. So it's not great, but it's a step in the right direction.
Is it? I see. Yeah,
At the
it is.
first step, right? There's loads more that needs to be done, but still the important thing is that we now believe you if you tell us that Uncle Joe has touched you.
I'm still shocked by the fact. And yeah, I'm just shocked by that fact.
I know it's shocking, but you just need to not let it be a problem for you. Okay?
Fine.
Okay. So the thing to remember is that at this time, the police are not trained in providing therapy or dealing with victims sensitively. They're supposed to, but they just don't have the training. So the police start handing over the therapy and rehabilitation and a bunch of the investigating over to social workers who are notorious for asking leading questions, which ends up wildly misrepresenting the truth and often leads to inaccurate claims of sexual molestation, which then obviously leads to more issues, more spending, and it's just everywhere, right? Sexual abuse is everywhere at this point. But the point is that loads of people support CAPTA And because who doesn't want to protect kids, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. It's not great, but it's a step in the right direction.
Okay. Sure.
So at this time, family income was also down and living costs was also increasing as well. And more American women are feeling the pressure to begin entering the workforce. And as a result, families start sending their kids to daycares.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the church at this time doesn't like this. They believe, obviously, in family unity and that mothers should be staying at home to look after their kids. And, of course, there is a big body of experts who also reinforce this message. For instance, there's a popular psychologist called Dr. Rowan Summit. He's also a huge arsehole, and he is an incest expert, of all things.
An incest expert?
Yeah, he specialized in that. He's an incest expert.
I don't feel like you should be an expert in that.
No, it's gross. So he says that child molestation is always the fault of the wife, because he says that all men have this inherent desire to have sex with their daughters, but they don't. I know. They don't if they have healthy marriages. And if men do molest their kids, it's because their wife has been absorbing herself in her job rather than attending to her husband.
The fact he claims to be an expert, I hope people don't listen to him.
Adam, this is mainstream stuff at the time. So as a result, many working mothers are now feeling extremely conflicted. So if you couple this with child sex abuse or allegations seemingly being on the rise, you can see how mothers are now starting to feel guilty about going off to work, right? So parents are being forced to just drop their babies off at daycare and just hope it goes well.
This is stupid.
It is stupid. So by the 1980s, child sex abuse is no longer just a fringe issue. It's now literally part of the American conversation.
And we can blame mums for that.
Yeah, of course. It's always the mum's fault, right? And so all of this combined creates this infrastructure that would end up amplifying wild and fantastical claims that would later become known as the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. So before we get back into the McMartin case, I want to tell you about one more thing that many say ignited the Satanic Panic as what we know today, because it's a really important part of the story. And that was with the release of a book in 1980 titled Michelle Remembers. So this was 3 years before little Matthew gets dropped off at the McMartin Day School. And this book gets released. And now it was co-written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pastor and his patient and eventual, so that's problematic straight away, his eventual wife, Michelle Smith. Right?
Okay.
So in the book, Lawrence uses a technique called recovered memory therapy.
Right.
Which he uses to uncover wild claims of satanic ritual abuse that Michelle had undergone as a child. Now, the book is popular because it talks about recovered memory therapy as a technique and how it can be used to uncover repressed abuse. So basically, what this technique is that a psychiatrist or psychologist will hypnotize a patient. Sometimes he'll drug them into a state where they're extremely suggestible. And people think, and often, people think that like hypnotism brings you into an altered state. But really, what it's doing is just making you super suggestible. Mm-hmm. And then through suggestion, they will then create these hidden memories that, of course, never happened. Mm. So to the patient, of course, they're very real. So Michelle's repressed memories involve reports of extremely explicit, like physical and sexual abuse by various people during what Michelle says is satanic rituals. So Michelle recovers that she was forced to drink urine, eat cannibalized human flesh, bathe in the blood of dismembered babies, participate in ritual murders, and endure a cage full of snakes and spiders. And she even encountered Satan himself in what Michelle recalls as the Feast of the Beast. Ultimately, though, Michelle says that she is saved by the direct intervention of the Virgin Mary herself.
Hang on. So how old was this supposed to have happened to Michelle?
So she was like a young child, like toddler, maybe, I would say maybe younger than 8.
And then she's bathing in baby blood or whatever.
Yeah, and she's repressed all of this up until this moment in time.
So, but did she give an inkling at any point before she met this person that, I wonder if I have some repressed memories about Satan?
No, that was what the whole point of the therapy was, to uncover those. But remember, she's all like in a suggestible state.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Adam, it's total garbage. But because the story is presented by a noted psychologist and a very traumatized Michelle herself, this book is taken very seriously. And literally overnight, it becomes a national sensation.
So this other expert, if we can class him as that.
He is a psychologist.
Yeah, but where does this inspiration come from for him to plant these?
Legacy, probably. People want to be notable for something. I don't know. It's fringe science at the time that then breaks into the mainstream. It's completely debunked now. People don't use it anymore. But at the time, it was pioneering in its field, right?
Right, okay.
So they end up going on shows like Oprah, a show called 2020, which is, do you remember when we did the Turpin family murder and we watched some of those clips? That was a 2020 show.
Okay.
Really popular in America. And literally every other popular TV show that you can imagine, they had them on as guests. They speak at conferences. They work with law enforcement and social workers. It's a huge deal, this book. Michelle Remembers is even used as training material for social workers who are dealing with sexual abuse claims. And these are the same people that are now handling a lot of the investigation.
I can see where this is
from
going.
The police. Yes.
Right, okay.
So, because at this time it was believed that a lot of sexual abuse allegations had roots in satanic rituals, and people really thought that the Church of Satan housed these kind of huge conspiracies of global satanic cults, including wealthy and powerful world elites, in which children were being abducted, bred for human sacrifice, pornography, and prostitution, and also cannibalism as well. So add all of these things together, and you can see how an entire generation of very scared, very guilty parents handing their kids over to people who they barely know. And then these same parents read in the newspapers that there are a lot of adults in this country that are very close to children that are raping them and have been secretly doing this for decades, and nobody knew this whole time.
That's terrible.
And this is the exact type of parent that Judy Johnson is in this moment in time.
She kind of reminds me of The Simpsons. I think she's the Reverend's wife who always goes on about, will somebody think of the children? All that kind of, that buys into this hysteria.
Yeah. I mean, and The Simpsons is very close to kind of our cultural reality, right? So yeah, a lot of these characters that we see in The Simpsons are portrayed from these just generational kind of thinking and things like that. So back to the McMartin story. So after being fobbed off by Matthew's doctor, Judy is convinced that Ray Bucky has been sodomizing her 2-year-old son. Now, Judy decides that she's going to take matters into her own hands, and she contacts the police. Now, given the prevalent climate surrounding everything that we've just talked about, they obviously take this very seriously. They immediately open up a case, and together, Judy and the police consult various doctors, and they eventually find an intern doctor who has never in his life diagnosed a child sex abuse claim before, and he corroborates the entire fantasy that Matthew has been abused.
An intern.
An intern.
Never, oh my word. This just gets ridiculous. It takes away from the actual abuse and everything and the serious situations that were going on, because they could be wasting their time on all this nonsense.
Yeah. It's mental. Adam, it's about to get so much worse. It's about to get crazy. So now, armed with this seemingly credible expert opinion, the police launch their investigation and they file charges against Ray, who is arrested. And after this, the police decide that they are going to immediately send out a letter to all the parents of all current and past students of the McMartin preschool, telling them that their kids may have been molested by Ray Bucky himself. And here is that letter.
So they sent it to all the parents of this school that they may or may not have been. That's a terrible. What happened to
Wait till you hear this letter. It's off the wall. Right. September 8th, 1983. Dear parent, this department is conducting a criminal investigation involving child molestation. Ray Bucky, an employee of Virginia McMartin Preschool, was arrested September 7th, 1983 by this department. The following procedure is obviously an unpleasant one, but to protect the rights of your children, as well as the rights of the accused, this inquiry is necessary for a complete investigation. Records indicate that your child has been or is currently a student at the preschool. We are asking your assistance in this continuing investigation. Please question your child to see if he or she has been a witness to any crime or if he or she has been a victim. Our investigation indicates that possible criminal acts, including oral sex, fondling of genitals, buttocks, or chest area, and sodomy, possibly committed under the pretense of taking a child's temperature. Also, photos may have been taken of children without their clothing. Any information from your child regarding having ever observed Ray Bucky to leave a classroom alone with a child during any nap period, or if they've ever observed Ray Bucky tie up a child, is important.
Tie up a child?
No, it's off the wall.
That's just going to send parents absolutely insane.
Yeah.
They're going to think the worst.
Yeah. And how do you even investigate this? You've just told all the parents exactly what to look out for. So if anything is false, they're going to be like, yeah, he sodomized my child. Oh, that's the exact thing that we put in the letter.
Yeah.
You don't put that in there. You say, what did he do? Oh, yeah, he hit him with the ruler. Okay, that's not one of our listed items.
Yeah.
You've literally given them the things that he would have done or supposedly have done.
Like abuse bingo.
God, Adam.
Let's not use that word.
Abuse bingo.
Well, that's kind of... Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tap this one. Oh, what have you got? Oh, I got sodomy. Oh, me too. Tap. So we ask that you please keep this investigation strictly confidential because of the nature of the charges and the highly emotional effect it could have on our community. Really? You're going to keep this private? You're going to keep this just within your house? No.
God, good thing they didn't have Facebook back then.
My
Can you imagine?
God. Yeah. This information still gets about. So please do not discuss this investigation with anyone outside of your immediate family.
Sure.
Do not contact or discuss the investigation with Raymond Bucky and any member of the accused defendant's family or employees connected with the McMartin preschool. Caps locked. There is no evidence to indicate that the management of Virginia McMartin's preschool had any knowledge of this situation, and no detrimental information concerning the operation of the school has been discovered during this investigation. Also, no other employee in the school is under investigation for any criminal act. Caps off. Your prompt attention to this matter and reply no later than September 16th, 1983 will be appreciated. Harry, whatever that name is, Cool Meyer Jr., Chief of Police, John Wiener, the captain. What a name.
John Wiener.
Yeah, Wehner. John Wiener. So yeah, that's the letter that they bloody send out to all these parents, past and present. I think 400 kids, 400 parents.
Wow.
Yeah. So place yourself in the parents' shoes just for a moment. You receive this letter in the post. What are your thoughts and what do you immediately do?
I imagine they're going to call the school. They're going to run outside their house. They're going to speak to the children. They're going to speak to other parents. They can do everything that they told them not to do.
Yeah. There's going to cause wide hysteria and wide panic.
There's going to be a meeting at a community centre, isn't there?
For sure. This letter quite literally is an example of what you do not do in an investigation like this. What happens, though, is the parents obviously start talking to their kids, and then they obviously start talking to each other, and then they obviously start comparing notes, and pretty soon, emotionally involved parents are engaging in leading and suggestive questioning of their children, which results in hundreds and hundreds of claims of child abuse, which causes all the parents in the area and the surrounding areas and the entire country to lose their absolute bloody minds. Just crazy. Why would you do that?
I would love to see some of the news reports for this.
Mate, some of the news reports are harrowing. It seems all legit and stuff. But when you actually take a step back and you just look at some of the details, you go, hang on a minute, this is not right.
Yeah. But yeah, I can imagine completely getting swept up in that if that's what you're led to believe by the police.
Yeah. And the thing, Adam, about young kids is that they are so eager to please, right? So you can imagine how quickly these kind of previous repressed memories, made obviously mainstream by Michelle Remembers, starts bubbling to the surface, right? And as time goes on, they become more and more outlandish because at this moment in time, there's no connection to Satanism whatsoever, right? This is just run-of-the-mill sexual abuse, the classic conventional kind, no rituals or anything like that. So it just gets even worse. Now, if you've ever seen a little kid tell a story, you instantly recognize it as a story, right? You're listening to your kid yabber on about something odd that they're doing, and you're like, really, Fifi? Is that true? You making that up? You recognize it straight away.
Yeah.
But at the time, considering what's just happened, this isn't what happens, right? Because parents have just been told that their kids may have been molested. So parents are like leaning into whatever the kid says, and they're taking everything they say as gospel rather than going, hang on a minute, that sounds a bit odd. That sounds a bit outlandish, right?
Yeah.
They're just believing everything, which is then just reinforced with more positive feedback and encouragement to just keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
So these kids just go off the wall. It's mental.
Right. Okay.
So the letter obviously finds its way into the news.
Mm-hmm.
And Judy starts spinning more stories. One day, she says that Matthew apparently walks in on Judy changing. And Matthew says, Matthew, wear bra. And so, after more lines of suggestive inquiring, Judy asserts that Ray apparently made her son wear a bra and tied him up with a rope.
Oh, God. Good thing like drag race wasn't a thing back this time.
Yeah, God, can you imagine the panic that would have ensued from that? So as the days progress, more and more parents are coming forward with allegations about misconduct, which of course is just rooted in nothing, right? For instance, one woman, Donna McGilly, says that her daughter was overly interested in her mother's kind of genitals, and so puts this down to her being abused.
Rather than just curious about what the human body is.
Exactly. And what's screwed up to me is that, like, children being convinced into believing that they've been abused by an innocent man. That's really disturbing.
It is, yeah.
It's mental. So the police are like, what the hell? And they're just not equipped to deal with any of this. So they hand over a large portion of the investigation to the so-called experts, which are social workers.
Mm.
And these people are trained that children never lie about these matters. But also, they don't know how to question these kids as part of an investigation. And on top of this, they're using material that references Michelle Remembers.
Right, okay.
It's just messed up. This is where we have a new character enter. Her name is Keen McFarlane. Mm-hmm. Now, she's a social worker and she's deeply embedded in kind of the child protection movement. Now, she plays a pivotal role, and let's just say her involvement does more harm than good. So Keen is in charge of interviewing and questioning the influx of accusations that are coming forward from parents and the kids, right? So Keen invites each child in using a combination of kind of puppets and atomically accurate dolls.
Right.
Imagine like kind of the courthouse doll that you would see.
Yeah.
They are kind of used as tools for children to describe forms of abuse that they might have faced in court, etc.
Yeah.
So McFarlane transforms these dolls into playthings, which only serves to encourage the children's wild imaginations. Now, Keen puts on a puppet show to make the kids feel a bit more comfortable, to break down the barriers, and just to make them feel like they're in playtime. Right? And then she would tell stories about the abuse that she thinks that the children had undergone. And then these kids start talking about it, basically.
Right.
So Keen would then continue to press their stories, which ends up becoming super elaborate. It's a no-brainer. Kids inherently want to please the adults, right? So when you've set out on this path of play and you are engaging their imaginations, like, they're going to blur the lines between what's real and what's not, right? Mm-hmm. It's just natural. So what's happening here is well-intentioned adults led by Keen are inadvertently planting false memories into these kind of innocent children's minds. And before you know it, these kids haven't got a clue about what's real and what's not. And Keen McFarlane does this to 400 kids, leading them into false accusations of child abuse. Like, none of it happened.
I hope it didn't. That's the thing. Like this, it just feels, I feel sorry if there were any people that did actually experience any kind of abuse, or because it just feels like this is just not the right way to go.
It's not. And you don't have to go too far with this in terms of the investigation to look at the evidence to realize that a lot of it is just bullshit. So one particular instance with a 5-year-old called Tanya. So Keen spends several minutes engaging her in fantasy play using various puppets and like a toy doctor's kit.
Right.
She's like, I think you have a little temperature there. They play with a banana puppet. They play with Big Bird, Mr. Doggy, Mr. Dragon, Cookie Monster, Bugs Bunny, an alligator puppet, Pac-Man, and Mr. Snake. And then when Tanya is deeply absorbed in play, Keen then presents Tanya with that collection of anatomical kind of correct dolls. And basically, they look like real people underneath their clothes. So if you take them off. And Keen is, look, we can take off their clothes. And Tanya then identifies the dolls' wee-wees and their chi-chis, which she calls breasts.
Right.
Butt-butts, the nagas hole, which is obviously the vagina. And so Keen then asks Tanya if she's ever seen a man's wee-wee. And she's like, yeah, daddy's. I've seen daddy's wee-wee. And Keen's obviously not satisfied with this answer. So she says, like, what about anyone else's? And Tanya insists that she's only ever seen her dad's wee-wee.
Right, okay. This is a weird conversation to have with a child.
It is really strange, isn't it? It's really disturbing. So Keen says, well, I know some secrets, and I know that you know about these secrets too. I know some secrets about your old school. But Tanya doesn't respond at all. Like, she's really steadfast. She's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
So Keen adds that she has seen Tanya's friends from the McMartin school, and they told her all about the bad secrets. So how about we have a good time with the dolls, and we can talk about some of those bad secrets, and that will help all those bad secrets go away. Wouldn't that be a good idea? Says Keen.
Oh, God.
Then Tanya is like, to the big bird, she like grabs it. She says, I hate those secrets. Ray did bad things and I don't even like it. And so what's happening here, these kids are like being completely led. And the problem here isn't that you shouldn't believe children when they report abuse. It's that you shouldn't badger children who insist that they haven't been abused into recalling false memories.
Yeah, and so is she referring to the teacher there, Ray?
Yeah, she's talking about Ray.
So she obviously knows what's going on and stuff like that.
But it's not, she doesn't know what's going on. I think she's coerced. She said, like, I've spoken to your friends and they've told me that they're secrets, right? Do you know what I mean? Nothing's happened here.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of anything.
Do you know what? I was just thinking, like, do you remember we used to watch Punch and Judy? Did you watch Punch and Judy?
Yeah, I get that sense. I got that sense when I was retelling this. Yes.
Just because obviously that's actually quite a violent show. When you watch, I remember watching it back as an adult going, this is awful.
Yeah.
Because he's like, the baby gets thrown out.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the crocodile eating him and all that sort of stuff.
And the policeman beating on them. And
yeah, so I just imagine with these puppets, can you reenact stuff? And they're probably doing things like this.
Yeah, they are. And kids love it.
Yeah.
So, again, it's worth noting that at this point, the McMartin case didn't kick off as a satanic ritual story, right? It was just a classic run-of-the-mill abuse story. Like, we haven't talked about anything satanic at all yet. That comes after more interviews with Judy Johnson, who then the media get hold of, and a cocktail of TV sensationalist news reports happen, and then whispers start spreading amongst the adults, who the kids then overhear, and then these stories then start to...
They're like sharing around school or whatever, and it just goes around. Yeah.
So Judy Johnson's son, Matthew, is coaxed into now roping in the 64-year-old Betty Rayner, who is another employee at the actual school.
Right.
Now, as Matthew Tail grows, he starts spinning wild tales about being molested at a ranch. Now, before long, Judy is convinced that the McMartin school is ground zero for a vast paedophile network that's rooted in Satanism. Now, keep in mind, parents at this moment in time, because of CAPTA, they can enter statements into the record like on their children's behalf. So they can say, oh, my son said this.
Right.
And that will be treated as gospel, as evidence. Right.
Oh, okay.
That's under CAPTA.
So they don't verify it with the child first. They just take it. Okay.
No. So this is the statement that Judy Johnson coaxes out of Matthew, right?
Okay.
So Matthew feels that he left LA International Airport in an airplane and flew to Palm Springs. Matthew went to an armory. The goat man was there. It was a ritual type of atmosphere at the church. Peggy drilled Matthew under the armpits with a drill. The atmosphere was of magic arts. Ray flew through the air. Peggy, Babs, and Betty were all dressed as witches. The person who had buried Matthew is Miss Betty. There were no holes in the coffin. Babs went with him on a train where they were hurt by men in suits. Ray waved goodbye. Betty gave Matthew an enema. Staples were put into Matthew's ears, nipples, and tongue. Babs put scissors in his eyes and chopped up animals. Matthew was hurt by a lion and an elephant played.
This is torture.
He's been tortured.
Yeah.
A goat climbed higher and a bad man threw it down the stairs. There were lots of candles. They were black. Ray pricked his pointer finger and put it in a goat's anus. Old grandma played the piano. A baby's head was chopped off and the brains were burned.
Because you want to listen to music whilst all this is going on.
I know. It's just
Nice little tune.
Peggy. Yeah.
Go on, Granny, play another one.
So Peggy had scissors in the church and she cut Matthew's hair. Matthew drank baby's blood. Ray wanted Matthew's spit.
Oh, God.
Okay. So all of this is put into the record.
So everything that Matthew said that happened one time because he remembers going to LAX.
And they believe it. Yeah, during school.
During school.
Like 8-hour school day.
So but then like he would have come back and surely had holes. Are they
Bingo.
But are they saying, Satanism or whatever can disguise those
Yeah, none of it matters.
injuries?
Yeah, it's crazy, Adam.
Oh
Now,
my God.
on another occasion, Judy claims that Peggy Bucky forced Matthew to watch a baby being beheaded and to drink his blood. Ray apparently sodomized Matthew while he had his head in the toilet and was taken to a car wash and he locked him in a trunk. Matthew also claimed that Ray pranced around in a cape and a Santa outfit, and the other teachers chopped up rabbits and they placed some weird star on Matthew's bum.
To be honest, even if he did say these things, he must have been coaxed because these are quite graphic, some of these things. Like as a kid, I don't think, you might say some weird stuff and whatever, but it's not like there was YouTube or things that you could get hold of where you'd be able to see this kind of behavior.
Yeah, I think the biggest telltale sign is that the theme is so consistent, right? They're all satanic in reference rather than like, the Santa stuff, that's what a kid would say, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like he pranced around in a cape and a Santa outfit.
Yeah, he grew and then fell, all these things. But
Everything else is so consistent with the Satanism. So, and again, this is all Judy, right? So you're exactly right. Clearly, Matthew's been coaxed into coming up with these fantasies, and this isn't what happens in child kind of sex abuse claims today, right? Like it's dealt with in a very different way rather than just being, we'll take your testimony, we'll stick that in the record. So when the news breaks that Satanists were behind this, the other children start coming forward with their own satanic accounts of their abuse, and kids talk about seeing babies getting murdered. But clearly, the police are like, there are no reports of missing babies or dead babies showing up anywhere.
I'm glad the police finally have a clue.
Well, do they?
Oh.
So people start developing this theory that Satanists are literally having children at home and choosing not to register them so they can then use them as human sacrifice. Right. And again, there's no evidence of this in any way, but everyone believes it because we're in a full-blown mania and nobody seems to be thinking anymore.
No logic's gone out the window.
Gone literally out of the window.
Buried.
Of course, the police find no wounds on Matthew. I am shocked that you never brought that up.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Like the whole, when his ears were stapled, he'd come home. Yeah. And she wouldn't, like the mum wouldn't have picked
cut his
up.
hair.
Yeah. And gone, Matthew, what's going on with your ears today?
Yeah. What, honey, what's this?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Cut your hair.
What's the vibe you're going for today?
This is what, but yeah, clearly she's born to the hysteria and she's turned absolutely crazy.
Of course, the police find no wounds. There's no evidence that any of this ever took place. But quite literally, none of this seems to matter. The closest thing investigators find in regards to any evidence is just some softcore pornography magazines in Ray's apartment. And later, authorities would later begin to realize that Judy's claims were just delusions of a paranoid schizophrenic.
Oh, they do actually come to...
Oh, yeah. Oh, she's diagnosed as a schizophrenic.
Right.
Yeah.
That explains it, perhaps.
But the snowball of suspicion is obviously now started rolling, and it's too late.
Right, okay.
We're literally in full-blown mania now.
Yeah, okay.
So Kenneth Lanning, who worked with the FBI as a behavioral scientist, says that once these cases are contaminated, which is what that letter did, right? It's literally impossible to question the kids properly because you have no degree of certainty what actually happened because all these allegations are now all suggestively led because you've told them what the things that Ray is supposedly have done, right?
This is crazy. I just think of, I go back to it again, like our Facebook local group of the housing estate that we live on, and the overreaction to certain incidents that happen on the estate, which are just really nothing. I can't even imagine like what parents must have been going through at this point in time.
That's it. And the thing is though, this is all mad and we can all see the seeds of something mad happening even on our Facebook groups. And they don't go anywhere too far. They don't roll too far because they're barricaded by logic and critical thinking and reason and things like that. Ever so often, there's a perfect storm. Hence why we went back 20 years to discuss everything that happened in the lead up to this, to understand how was it able to keep on and going and going. Yeah, that's exactly it. And every once in a while that happens. And it's happened recently in recent history as well. Think about Pizzagate as an example, or the QAnon kind of stuff, hysteria, and Trump and things like that. And the belief around like how he is this kind of, this weird messiah kind of type person.
That bit,
the insurrection.
Yeah, and the whole sort of taking sort of Washington.
It's just mental. So this letter leads to an overwhelming demand from parents for a full investigation into the McMartin school. So the district attorney, Robert Filibosia, what a weird name. Americans have quite strange names, don't they? But anyway, Filibosia, who thought that putting away some Satanists would be pivotal to his re-election. So he decides that he's going to bring the case to trial in 1984, so a year later. Ray, Bucky, Peggy Ann Bucky, Virginia McMartin, and 3 other McMartin teachers known as the McMartin 7 were all indicted on over 193 counts of child abuse.
So are they accused of abuse now, or just somehow being involved, cover up?
They're all being accused.
Accused of it, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Ray is held for 5 years in jail as a child molester. And as a result of this entire shit show, like the homes of the McMartin 7 were all searched. No evidence was found whatsoever. Oh, by the way, they find a black cape in one of the teachers' houses, which is evidence, of course, of witchcraft. It turns out it's a graduation gown. But it doesn't matter.
Matthew's story, he did see someone in a cape.
He did? Yeah. Claims start emerging that there are secret tunnels under the school and children allegedly witness a baby being murdered. However, with no concrete evidence found by any of the police, parents become suspicious of the police's involvement in this because they're not finding any evidence. So as a result, in 1985, a bunch of parents start excavating in the school's car park in search for these tunnels. And the district attorney, who is looking to be re-elected, hires an archaeological firm to help them. But of course, they find nothing.
They must have been like, they must have filled in the holes or something or whatever. Can you imagine what they were going through?
Or probably, it can't be here. We must be over there somewhere. Like, they'll probably never concede that it isn't there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They would never accept that.
They wouldn't accept that they're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So the court case starts and does have some degree of rationality to it because obviously there's no evidence that anyone was harmed in any shape or form, right? The trial actually takes 28 months, and the district attorney announces that the primary purpose of the preschool was to solicit young children to conduct lewd acts on the teachers and to recruit children for child pornography purposes. His office then suggests that there are millions, those are the words he uses, millions of child porn films that exist of the kids. And of course, the media dutifully report on all of this day in, day out. But again, Mr. DA, where's the evidence?
Yeah, where are you getting that? There must be millions.
Must be. Got to be. Has to be. Where is it? Where are you keeping it? But not a single shred of evidence comes to light. It's because darker forces are working here, Adam. Satanists. We're dealing with Satanists.
Yeah, okay.
So People magazine dubs the McMartin preschool as California's nightmare nursery. Nice and sensationalist.
Nice.
The Times releases an article with the one-word title, Brutalized.
Brutalized, wow.
Remember also, Adam, these are credible sources that are reporting on all of this, right? From the DA's office to the Times newspaper. So it's not just the tabloids. And so the media continue to instill this fear and panic across America. So much so that the McMartin school is vandalized with messages like Ray must die. And also eventually they set the school on fire. Also, Peggy's car, Peggy McMartin, someone attempts to bomb her car.
Bomb her car?
Adam, Peggy herself is attacked and stabbed in the crotch. People have lost their minds.
How old was Peggy again?
So Peggy is Ray's mother.
Ray's mother. I thought she was like 70.
That's Virginia McMartin.
Oh, sorry. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, regardless of age, someone got stabbed stabbed over this.
In the crotch.
Awful.
Horrible, hey? So parents start to form investigative teams, taking their children around the area to identify supposed molestation sites. These are all places that spring from kind of the children's imaginations when they're pressing them for details. Mm-hmm. And as children identify the homes and businesses, parents start recording kind of the addresses and relay these to the DA's office, who then goes off and shares these addresses with the other parents, right? Another guy apparently camped out near an airport and noted down kind of aircraft registration numbers because, if you recall, Matthew said that he was flown from the LA kind of airport to Palm Springs. Mm-hmm. So he's reporting any suspicious activity. He does find something. He finds a female pilot suspected of being a lesbian.
Alert the church elders.
Oh, God. Can you imagine? How funny is that?
God. So he's like spying. He's like hunting down planes.
He's just camping outside the airport watching planes take off. And
he has a pilot that gives a woman a kiss or something. Goes,
God knows. I think she just was a handsome woman.
Gets a notebook out. Lesbian? ?
Yeah. So funny. So a woman, Jackie McGailey, her daughter briefly attended McMartin, but after the investigation began, right? So she wouldn't have been abused. But she becomes convinced that Ray Buckey had molested her child, despite obviously him being under constant surveillance at this time. So she grows increasingly suspicious, accusing several other people, including her former boyfriend, who was a therapist, of molesting her own child. Also, rumors start circulating that the mayor's wife is transporting dead bodies in her car.
What is wrong with these people?
I think that's just a recurring theme. Let's from now on just assume that throughout all this, people are mental.
Yeah,
don't need to say it anymore.
It's something in the water supply.
Possibly hysteria.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. So it reaches a point where those that are spreading these rumors begin to accuse one another. For example, a couple who hosted a celebratory party for the McMartin parents on the day that the teachers are arrested are now becoming the subject of rumors themselves.
Oh, turn on them.
Exactly. And these are spurred from the fact that their business was near an athletic club where one of the children pointed out was one of the molestation sites. Yeah. So the trial just continues. Judy Johnson's condition worsens and her husband ends up leaving her. And she then accuses him of now being part of the satanic conspiracy. So around about this time, she has a bit of an episode and she barricades herself in the house. She's armed with literally a pile of guns that she's been storing under her cancer-ridden son's bed.
Oh, my word.
And the little kid, he's 8 or 9 at the time, he says like he will do anything to protect his mother, including kill anyone who tries to come into the house. So Judy is later admitted to a psychiatric unit where she is diagnosed with schizophrenia. Tragically, both Judy and her eldest son, they pass away shortly afterwards.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, it's tragic.
What did she pass away from?
Alcoholism. So her son, obviously from the tumor, and Judy from alcohol-related liver failure. So she was self-medicating, like having to deal with all the depression, the fact that her son was ill and stuff. But Adam, none of this mattered. Like this came up in court, but no one was like, let's put the brakes on this, right? Like the woman who initially raised these concerns and caused this hysteria through all these other unfortunate events has been diagnosed as schizophrenic. She's not well.
Yeah,
why don't we just take a chill pill? Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's a shame no one looked after her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is sad. Like she's gone through the mill. So on November 2nd, 1989, the McMartin case is prepared. Now remember, this is 1989 now.
This has been going on for quite some time.
It's been going on a while. The case is now presented to a jury who deliberate for 2.5 months. Now, Peggy Buckey is acquitted on all charges, while the jury just can't make up their mind about Ray. At the time, the judge expresses his lack of surprise at the verdicts. He's like, okay, yeah, sure. You can't come to an agreement. Because he's just fed up of just like the absolute chaos that this trial has caused. And yeah, at this point, he's like, I'm so fucking glad it's over. Like, I need to be done with this.
Yeah. It's gone on for like, 28 months, you say?
Yeah, a long time. So child protection groups, they are completely outraged, leading to protests in Manhattan Beach with people waving signs like, we believe the children. A TV poll at the time indicated that 80% of viewers believed that the Buckeys were guilty.
Right.
So that's how deep this hysteria is, yeah. In the end, no one is convicted in the McMartin case, but yet Ray spends 5 years in jail. And the McMartin case alone cost $15 million. It's the longest running criminal case in US history at 28 months and did not produce a single bit of concrete evidence.
Oh my God, think of what they could have been doing. And like, it's not to say that you should be taking these things seriously, but think about what they could have been doing.
Yeah, just think about it. Mental. So following the trial, like many similar cases also emerge, but all of them are largely unfounded. And again, amongst all this chaos, like investigators and even judges are accused of involvement in the pedophilic ring.
The whole community's been infiltrated by this weird underground ring.
Yeah. So across the country, hundreds are charged. Numerous individuals spend time in jail. Families are literally shattered and lives are literally ruined. For an example of just how destructive this period of history is, in 1985, a woman called Carol Fausted. Now, this woman is actually from the UK.
Okay.
So it's far-reaching. It did make it over here to a degree, like the panic and the hysteria around Satanism and these repressed memories, right? Michelle remembers it was huge. So Carol Fausted, she went looking for medical advice for a headache, and instead of receiving kind of medication, she was given therapy, which included hypnosis to recover repressed memories of satanic abuse. So under the influence, she ended up recovering false memories that her parents were leading a satanic cult and that her mother had murdered one of her siblings, like when she was a kid. In reality, her parents had just lost a child due to a heart defect before Carol was born. So she's probably been told that throughout her life.
Yeah.
They probably visited the grave and things like that. But no, this manifests into something way more sinister. And Carol then made these weird claims, like that she had birthed 6 children during, say, various satanic rituals.
And they're all been taken away from her.
All been taken away from her, yeah. But of course, medical records show that she was never pregnant, ever.
God.
And this resulted in Carol cutting all ties with the family and assuming a whole new identity.
Wow. That's powerful. Like, how disruptive this has been. These lies.
So sad. And then in 2005, like, Carol, like, mysteriously dies. No one really understands how either.
Right, okay.
I'm wondering whether or not it was a bit like Judy. I don't know. Something kind of psychological, mental. Who knows? But yeah, mysterious circumstances. And her story highlights just how destructive this stage in history was. In 1985, 60 Minutes aired an episode linking Dungeons and Dragons to satanic rituals and suicide. And by 1987, 2 Christian activists had published like a controversial pamphlet claiming that Dungeons and Dragons, get this, promoted critical thinking in children, leading them towards heresy and devil worship. God forbid people are thinking out there.
Yeah, I mean, at least they're
God
smart.
damn it, you made my kid think.
Worshipping Satan, but he's smart.
Yeah. Hilarious. So during this period, heavy metal music was also vilified. And the reason was because like metal bands began to recognize that if they integrated satanic themes into their content, it would cause adults to ban their kids from listening to the music and inadvertently cause their children to want to listen to their music even more.
It's like free PR almost.
It's free PR. This is what's known as the Barbra Streisand effect. You ever heard of that? So when attempting to kind of like suppress information, ends up actually over amplifying it instead, causing more exposure. So young metal fans are starting to embrace this defiant stance, which is very smart. Very smart.
I remember actually, I'm sure growing up, like I think this was before my time, but loosely remember like, songs like on MTV and stuff like that wouldn't be shown because it would be rituals and stuff and news videos and stuff.
And out of this whole movement as well, this is also where you get like the labels against music, where kind of parental advisory is like what?
Listed, the black and white logo,
That's it. So the Satanic Panic of the 1980s and the 1990s ended up leaving this huge mark on American society, which reveals that danger that mass hysteria can have on a community. And once again, the profound influence of kind of the media in shaping that public opinion as well. It's always the media at the crux of it. Like we saw that with Amanda Knox, which this period saw countless innocent individuals being wrongly accused. Their families were torn apart. Huge amounts of money and resources were just wasted based on just baseless investigations, right? And reflecting on this era, like society learned the importance of skepticism and the need for rigorous, unbiased investigation. Stop giving huge parts of this investigation over to like
people not qualified.
Untrained kind of social workers who are using Michelle Remembers as a resource guide, and train the police on how to sensitively do their job rather than palming it off to people that aren't qualified.
So you mentioned that about, the whole Michelle Remembers, and I think you said that they stopped using that now, or it's not used.
Oh, yeah.
When did they stop using it?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah. But they don't use it anymore because I guess from the fallout of this, they realized that, well, that was probably a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Live and learn.
So I think it's safe to say that the Satanic Panic serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of misinformation and the responsibility to ensure that due process and critical thinking is undertaken at all times. Otherwise, you end up with shit like this. It's just wild. So yeah, that's the story of the Satanic Panic of the 1980s.
God, there wasn't even any Satan in it.
No,
That's crazy. But there wasn't anyone actually doing anything
No, there wasn't.
closely related to Satanism.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mental, hey?
I wonder if the kids that have come out now, they probably didn't really know what they were describing and stuff like that. But I wonder who now, if you like asked them what they thought about it all.
Oh my God. So there are some accounts. One of the little kids that were being interviewed, he was like years later, it wasn't even that long, 5 years later, he was like, I wasn't going to get out of that room unless I told them what they wanted to hear.
Really?
Yeah. So they knew. They knew.
God.
Just unfounded.
And I just can't believe this went on for years and just what a strange place and time. It's not even that long ago. 30 years, is it? Or 30, 40 years.
And when Ray Bucky was finally acquitted, like he was on Larry King and they were like, so what are you going to do now? And he was like, I just want to be left alone.
Did he get compensation? I would have thought he would have done, right?
I don't think so.
Usually if you're wrongly accused, you do.
Maybe that's more of a modern thing. I don't know. But he definitely deserves it.
And what about the family? Did they like reopen the school or did they just all shut this down?
They shut it down and it's now I think a laundry service or a dry cleaners.
That's quite a big laundry service.
Well, for a school?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a really small school. So when you actually look at 927 something Manhattan Boulevard in Manhattan Beach in California, it's like on the corner.
Right. Okay.
It's a little small plot. So it's quite a big sizable dry cleaners now, but it's not like it's not like a massive school. It's just a daycare center, maybe for 30 kids, maybe
fine.
Really small. And when you look at the old pictures of it, it's like kind of the little chain link fence.
Yeah.
And got like a little hand painted kind of sign at the top that says McMartin kind of preschool. Oh. And it's really cute, like little community, little school where you would just drop your kids off. And
it's a shame the family that their livelihoods kind of ruined and then you've got actual convicted paedophiles out that deserve to be locked up. And then these poor people. But
remember, they weren't even locking up paedophiles at this point, right? They were just giving them rehabilitation and therapy.
And it's only now, actually, that we're uncovering some of these things that happened, all the story and sensationalism that was around. Yeah, Jim will fix it and all that sort of stuff. That's only the last 10 years, isn't it?
So that's it.
Cool.
Ready for the outro?
Good story.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So, any final words?
No.
Nope. Okay, well, that's another episode of The Compendium, an assembly of fascinating and intriguing things. If you've enjoyed today's episode, subscribe and leave us a cheeky 5-star review and engage with us on Instagram or visit us on our new home on the web, which is, Adam?
Thecompendium.com.
Oh, I thought it's the Compendium Podcast. God, you're bad at this.
Sorry.
It's thecompendiumpodcast.com. And remember, we release every Tuesday, so join us next week as we unravel yet another intriguing story from the world of the fascinating. Until then, don't leave your kids outside a nursery with a note. Nothing good can come from that. See you next week.
Bye.